What if addiction wasn't always loud or obvious? What if it didn't come in bottles or needles, but instead crept in through the cracks of everyday life? That ninth scroll through social media in under a minute. The ache to check your messages just to feel reassured. One more episode, then another. And suddenly, what once felt harmless begins to feel like survival. This isn't about chasing a high anymore. It's about escaping a low, and that low, it's often hidden so deep that we don't even know where it started. But here's where it gets deeper. Renowned psychologist Carl Jung wouldn't begin with detox or discipline. He'd begin with your soul. Welcome to Beyond the Realm, where today we explore addiction not as a flaw, but as a spiritual signal. Carl Jung's revolutionary insight turned everything we thought about addiction upside down. He didn't see it as the enemy. Instead, he believed it was the symptom of a much deeper crisis, a spiritual thirst, a disconnect from your most authentic self. In Jung's words, every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism. What he meant was simple but profound. The real issue isn't the substance, it's the emptiness. We live in a world that is dopamine deprived yet stimulus obsessed. We're constantly seeking to feel better, but our brains are trapped in a loop. That loop isn't just chemical, it's soulful. And until we understand what's behind that cycle, we'll never break it. Have you ever felt like something inside you is missing? That despite the achievements, routines, and obligations, something vital remains untouched? Carl Jung called this the disconnection from the self. Not your ego, not your resume, but the deepest part of you that holds meaning, creativity, and purpose. Addiction, then, isn't merely self-destructive behavior. It's a misunderstood search for wholeness, a cry from the unconscious asking not just for relief, but for reconnection. It's not just about stopping a habit, it's about answering a call from the soul. And on Beyond the Realm, we don't silence that call, we listen to it. Let's talk about dopamine, not as a trend, but as a messenger. This tiny neurotransmitter is behind every moment that makes us feel alive. It's the push to get out of bed, the thrill of a message, the joy in someone thinking of you. But what happens when dopamine runs low? Life turns grey, flat, uninspired, and then the craving begins. But here's the truth. This crash doesn't start with binging shows or junk food. It often begins far earlier, in childhood, in environments where authenticity had a cost, where you had to be the perfect one, the strong one, the peacekeeper, where your real feelings weren't safe. You learn to suppress your needs, wear a mask, and in that survival, you lose touch with yourself. Jung called this phenomenon psychic splitting. It happens when you're forced to bury parts of who you are, your fears, your anger, even your desire to be seen, and instead build a mask to survive. And your brain? It notices. It begins a search for relief, not necessarily for happiness, but for a moment where it feels okay to exist. That's when the addictive cycle starts. Not because you're broken, but because you're trying to remember what it feels like to be whole, even if just for a minute. This is not addiction. This is soul-level pain wearing the mask of escape. At Beyond the Realm, we believe healing means removing the mask and meeting what's underneath with compassion. Here's the most radical idea yet. Addiction isn't failure. It's a form of intelligence. Your psyche, your body, your soul, they created this coping mechanism because you didn't know how to process the pain you carried. And now you're curious. You're ready. You're beginning to listen. This is where real healing begins. Not with shame, but with insight. Carl Jung believed true healing comes when we integrate the hidden parts of ourselves, the pieces we abandoned to survive. So let's talk about how to do that. Imagine a room in your mind where every part of you that's ever felt unworthy, angry, needy, or afraid has been locked away. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of the psyche where we bury everything we were told not to be. And those parts, they don't disappear, they leak out Through addictions, projections, and painful cycles, shadow work is the process of bringing those buried parts into the light. It begins with a simple, courageous question. If my addiction could speak, what would it say? Write down the answer without judgment. Let it speak. That voice may reveal something you've needed to hear for years. This isn't self-pity. It's sacred dialogue, and it's the first key to liberation. Now let's go even deeper into the body. Carl Jung didn't teach breathwork directly, but his teachings open the door for it. Breath is the only bodily function that is both automatic and intentional. It is a bridge between your mind and your unconscious. When practiced consciously, especially in flowing rhythmic patterns, breathwork sends a signal to your nervous system. You're safe now. You can release. People often cry, tremble, or feel an unexpected surge of clarity during breathwork. Why? Because breath reveals what addiction numbs. Even one session can uncover a powerful truth. The thing you've been craving wasn't a substance, it was you. Carl Jung once said, "The soul speaks in images." That's why symbols, dreams, and rituals have always held deep meaning. They're not just spiritual fluff, they're direct messages from your unconscious. Here's a ritual you can try today. Find a quiet space. Light a candle, a symbol of purification. Look into your eyes in a mirror, not to judge, just to witness. Then speak out loud. I know I've been trying to escape something. I may not understand it yet, but I'm here and I'm listening. Write a letter to the part of you that is addicted, not to shame it, but to understand it. Fold the letter, place it under the candle, let it burn for 15 minutes. You're not fixing, you're reconnecting. And now, the transformation begins. Because healing isn't about returning to who you were before the addiction. That version of you was already in pain, already disconnected. The real alchemy? It's becoming the person that addiction was pointing you toward, the one who feels whole without needing to escape. This is what Carl Jung called individuation. Not recovery, not self-help, but the soulful journey of becoming your full, radiant self. You don't have to be perfect, just integrated, just present. And here, on Beyond the Realm, we honor that path. What if healing wasn't just an internal process, but something that starts with your outer world? Carl Jung once observed that much of human suffering, what he called neurosis, comes from a life not lived. That means when your job drains you, your relationships dull you, and your daily routine suffocates your spirit, your soul begins to protest. And often that protest shows up as addiction. So here's the first step in reshaping your reality. Ask yourself, what in my life feeds the addiction? And what feeds my authenticity? Maybe it's one honest conversation you've been avoiding, one artistic expression you've been craving, one boundary that feels hard but necessary. These aren't just habits, they're soul choices. And when your outer life begins to align with your inner truth, healing doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Let's go even deeper, because this next step can change everything. In today's hyper-stimulated world, we scroll to avoid silence. We binge to avoid reflection. We consume so we don't have to feel. But stimulation is not the same as connection, and it will never fill the void. So the next time you feel the craving coming on, don't just ask how to stop it. Ask this instead. What is this craving trying to tell me? What you're truly seeking might be depth, meaning, rest, or understanding. Begin to replace dopamine loops with meaning loops. Create something without judging it. Read something that stirs you instead of numbing you. Sit in silence and ask yourself how you really feel. Spend time with people who offer presence, not just distraction. Because when your life becomes a space where your full self is welcome, addiction begins to lose its grip. Here's something you might not hear in traditional recovery spaces. Healing is not a straight line. Carl Jung understood this. The unconscious doesn't move in steps. It moves in spirals. That means sometimes we revisit the same wound again, but on a deeper level. And if relapse happens, it's not shameful. It's sacred information. Relapse says, there's something you missed. Let's look again. You're not back at square one. You're on a new layer of the spiral, with more insight, more tools, and more strength than ever before. Because the real miracle isn't just that you survived, it's that addiction became the reason you came home to yourself. This is individuation, not recovery, not self-help, but reclamation. You're gathering every lost piece, the shadow, the artist, the inner child, the dreamer, the seeker, and weaving them into a radiant, unified whole. So if you've been waiting for a sign, let this be it. You don't need to go back to who you were before the struggle. That version of you was already hurting. Instead, step forward into the self that addiction was pointing toward all along. The self that doesn't need to escape, because they've come home. You are not broken. You are becoming. And here on Beyond the Realm, we'll walk that path with you into the mystery, the shadow, the beauty, and the light of who you really are. If something in this journey spoke to your soul, even just a whisper, comment below, "I'm coming home." And don't forget to subscribe to Beyond the Realm for more videos that reach far beneath the surface and guide you straight back to the soul.